In 1928, the Kuomintang government made Nanjing its capital. However, this did nothing to unify the country and stop the fighting among the various warlords. Meanwhile, in the south, the sparks of industrialization lit a fire that quickly became a blaze spreading northwards. As capitalism took root, many people began talking about a golden decade. But all the time, foreign powers were waiting in the wings, hoping to benefit from China's rapid progress. Against this backdrop, a group of scholars carrying their own bedding and simple belongings made their way across a bandit-infested wilderness. Before 5 o'clock in the morning, the scheduled time for the bus to leave, we gathered at the bus station. The bus didn't show up until 7. The place was situated beside a pig market where probably all the pigs for the city's daily consumption were being slaughtered. Amid the desperate howling and shrieking of 2,000 pigs, we boarded the bus and set off, leaving Chaoyangmen Gate behind. After disembarking from the bus, the first thing we asked for was the hotel, which turned out to be infested with flies, domestic animals being fed from the hotel windows. We'd covered a long distance in hot weather, and everyone was thirsty. We rushed to a well where people were working nearby, and we hastily hauled up a bucket of well water, only to see it was full of dirt from top to bottom. We didn't drink the well water. Dear Sicheng, after 2 weeks outside, I feel like going back by any transportation we can lay our hands on, so long as it is straight away. We've trudged along from place to place, soaked through with sweat. We've walked or worked from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, the hottest time of the day. We are exhausted. The food is inedible in hot weather like this. Compared with last week, everyone is downhearted. Fleas keep bothering us, and sitting in a third-class carriage, there was no room to scratch ourselves. The result was, we all had swellings all over our bodies. On such a demoralizing trip, nothing brought more relief than making a discovery of some kind. In front of the rotating sutra shelf, the Amitabha was smiling as much as ever. Behind the shelf, over the empty landing, we stepped up to the floor, most of which was open. We found that the upper part of the hall was a very elaborately made structure, the parts of which are described in the ancient text building standards. We were wild with happiness. In the transparently blue sky of Shanxi, white clouds drifted past in a way that made one forget things. Beauty was everywhere. The mountains, waters, fortresses and villages, a corner of a temple or a stupa caught in the sunset. So beautiful that they made one's heart ache. Looking up, we saw no ceiling above, and according to the text building standards, we knew this was an open ceiling. Its beam structure was highly elaborate, of a kind we hadn't seen anywhere else. Instantly, our fatigue lifted and we were overwhelmed with excitement. Just a couple of months after the discovery of the Liao Dynasty Dula Temple in Jixian County, we were standing before another structure that was just as ancient. What a piece of luck! The local school teacher came, a couple of soldiers came, and a couple of shy women came hand in hand, and they all watched us with curiosity. Kids pushed each other to get a more advantageous position, fascinated by the camera we were holding to take pictures. They helped us take measurements with a ruler while the teacher helped us make copies of the stone inscriptions. "How old is this?" they asked. "Very old," we answered in excitement. "About 1,400 years old." "Wow!" they exclaimed in disbelief. We said wow too, with pride. Who is smiling so sweetly, so heartily, so engagingly? Strings of shining pearls highlight her simplicity. Spring water moves invisibly below and gurgles merrily above, every drop shimmering in the light to congregate before dispersing. Who is smiling into this tall stupa with nameless birds circling around it? Who is smiling at these aeolian bells turning in the breeze as they hang from the glazed eaves? Where are they going? The sky. The scholars made one thrilling discovery after another, and their sense of national pride grew in the thought of all the ancient buildings across the country waiting to be documented, measured, photographed and recorded. But it was at a time when human life counted for little, let alone ancient buildings, many of which had been commandeered as billets for soldiers or as stores for provisions and fodder. New styles touched off wild fancies in the more conservative towns. People were trying to modernize the ancient buildings. Man-made marvels from history were permanently lost. The window lattices were always the first to be destroyed, followed by the carvings on the doors and gates. Culture was being lost to ignorance. We seldom saw an ancient artwork intact, free from damage, left in its original state and without any contemporary touches. We knew that just a spark was enough to set a 1,000-year-old temple on fire. The nation, its civilization and culture are still struggling for survival, no matter how many priceless wonders are discovered. Does this make my heart ache? It certainly does. If we are reduced to the dreadful situation in which we cannot even protect the heritage passed down to us from our ancestors, and in which we see treasures destroyed or dispersed to be sold at street markets for a penny or two, we are unworthy and worthless descendants, without the slightest wisdom or virtue left. Recently, some foolish architects, having given up the opportunity to build Western-style houses and carrying their bedding along with them, have been wandering about doing surveys to find masterworks by their ancient ancestors and to retrieve the legendary skills with which their ancestors constructed such great buildings. In the autumn of 1933, Liang Sicheng found himself in Yingxian County in Shanxi Province. There, with his colleagues Liu Dunjian and Mo Zhongjiang, he came across a wooden pagoda. Today was a big day as we paid an official visit to the temple. We were all so dumbfounded by this man-made marvel that our mouths dropped wide open. What a pity that you weren't with me and missed this historic moment. If you had been with us, I'm sure you would have felt the same. This pagoda is wholly unmatched. You cannot comprehend the level of artistry in wood attained by the ancients unless you see a magnificent structure such as this. I feel overwhelmed by the era in which this wonder was born, by its architect and its builders. Like the Bojia Jiao Tangdian at Huiyin Temple in Datong in Shanxi Province, which Japanese scholars believe to be the oldest wooden structure in China, the wooden pagoda at Yingxian County Temple also dated from the Liang dynasty. Excited, Lin Huiyin wrote, "The evolution of Chinese architecture remains a moot point right now. For instance, to date, no Tang dynasty wooden structure has been found, and some paragraphs in the text building standards are yet to be deciphered. This era between the Tang and Song called Liao has left for us so many wooden marvels, and they are very useful in helping us understand key points in the evolution of Chinese architecture. For these stubborn scholars, this really is a significant discovery."
它经历了将近1000年地震呀、人为的破坏呀、自然力量的这风雨是这个对它的冲击，它都没有损害了。也就你们看到咱们台阶上那个角兽的分化不完整了，但是木头反而在这儿什么问题没有。说它这个木构件已经经过1000年的互相挤压、咬合，扭成一个整体了。结构上有很多神奇的地方。
过州的管辖范围。
游客来一般最关心什么问题？
他这个倾斜，还会不会让还能登几年？会不会马上就不让登了？最关心就是他这个倾斜维修情况。专家预测近100-200年肯定是没有问题，但是100-200年不修没问题，但是游人的踩踏这个就很难说了。